Oh, hello there, it's me again. Right, today we're going to be looking at Jeyll and Hyde. We're going to be exploring quotations, specifically in chapter 1. There's another video for all the other chapters, lots of other quotation work. We'll be focusing on exploding quotations. Let's get started. Right, so exploding quotations from Jeyll and Hyde. Sorry to keep abbreviating it, but you know what I mean. It's a strange case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And we're just doing the first chapter. I didn't want to do the whole thing because there's a lot to go on. Now, if you didn't want to refer to it as chapter 1, refer to it as the story of the door, or you could just refer to it structurally as the beginning. Alright, now obviously as soon as someone mentions where certain things happen, say where it is. It's called contextualization. Alright, so let's have a look. Boom! What does it mean? To explode quotations. Now, a lot of teachers refer to this as delving deeper, going further, or just plain old simple analysis. And what I mean by quotations, well obviously quotations are sections taken from the text. You can have direct quotations, you can have indirect quotations. Direct quotations is you more or less are just snapping it out, you're cutting it right out of there. And an indirect, you kind of put it in your own words. Maybe an individual word from the text will be in inverted commas. To me, they're more sophisticated. I personally like a range. Now, when we're talking about quotations in one of these AQAs, we're looking for, I would say, a minimum of 8 quotations. That could just be 8 individual zoomed in words, but we're looking for a minimum. Or you can't say that you've looked at it in a detailed way. Okay, next, can you link it to the social historical context? Can you link it to what's going on in Victorian era? And the big one, I suppose, last, a range of alternative meanings. Showing you understand or the connotations of one quotation is good. Offering alternatives through discourse markers, perhaps, maybe, furthermore, in addition to, you are really unpacking this. You're taking the meat off the bone. You're really giving it a good go. Okay then, right. What do I mean to explode a quotation? First off, what is the technique? Now, a basic thing that we need to think about is the actual use of subject terminology. Subject terminology is the posh way to say the words that you're using, the correct English words. For example, subject terminology in maths might be algebra or trigonometry, I suppose. But here we're looking at generic subject terminology of English. Adjectives, verbs, nouns, alliteration, onomatopoeia, and so on. So, what is the technique? Can you identify it? When you've discovered that, what does it mean? What does the actual quotation itself mean? For example, looking at something like trample calmly, what does that mean? Can you picture it? Can you explain it in other words? Often if you can't think of the direct technique, you might just basically tell me, prove that you understand it. Alright, next, where does it belong? Where does this take place? Contextualize it. Now that really is talking about significantly where the beginning of describing Mr. Hyde, for example. Is it towards the end where Mr. Utterson is closer to the truth? Where does it belong? Which links in directly with who says it and where. Obviously, the narrator can affect your understanding of it. Sometimes you might have an unreliable narrator. The maid, for example, talking about Sir Danvers' Carew murder, she seems to me a little bit quirky, a little bit highly romanticised, maybe a bit lonely. She describes Sir Danvers as beautiful. It's slightly unusual, so I don't know if I can fully trust everything she's saying. Certainly not the picture she's painting. Okay, can you link it to another quotation? This is where you're going to make your money. Can you link it to other things that are going on? Can you link it to 2, 3, 4 more other things? If it's an individual word you zoomed in on, can you form a lexical set and explore those? Can you find an example where something completely opposite to what's being described in the quotation happens? Now, I'm a massive fan of blagging it if you can blag it, but when it comes to quotations, you can't blag them. You need to know them. It's a knowledge-based exam, and without them, you're dead in the water. So, chapter 1, story of the door. Here's several quotations that I put down for you. A lot of them, you should be looking at them thinking, oh, I know exactly who said that. I know what that means. The subject terminology is coming into my head. I told you where they all are, obviously, at the beginning. This is before anything's unfolded. This is before we really have a clue about what's going on. So just have a little read through over those just for a second. And of course, the secret to which quotes to learn and to really analyse in depth, to explode, they're the ones that create an image. They're the ones that are using imagery such as similes, metaphors, hyperbole, something that you can really get your teeth into. If it's just one word, that's nice. You can use that as a supporting quote, but it's never going to be the bulk of your argument. And remember, just like a detective, you need the evidence. Once you've got the evidence, then you can fully explore what it means. Okay, I thought we'd just have a go together. I'll do one for you, and then you can do all of them yourself, have a think about them, go back, check in your books, look in the text itself, see if you can make any more connections. But again, it's just starting to get you to think about it in chapter 1. So first off, if we look at it, it wasn't like a man, it was some damned juggernaut. Now straight away, the first section of that is telling me something is very, very unusual. Now if you remember who says it and where, this is Mr. Enfield. I've already told you where. Cheat. The story of the door. So Mr. Enfield is telling his friend, Mr. Utterson, about this strange incident that happened on this street. Mr. Enfield himself, if you talk about the narrator, he's a little bit of a man about town. What does he do up that late? What's going on? Where's he been? He himself might have a bit of a past, or a bit of a present even, getting up to all sorts of stuff. So if I want to know what it means, it wasn't like a man. He's talking about a man, and he uses the pronoun it. Therefore, automatically suggesting he's not a human, which tells the reader, or makes the reader think, what on earth is it then? So he says, also the thing that's really kind of jumping out of me, like it wasn't like a man, semicolon, so we have that lovely break, almost kind of like Mr. Enfield is hesitant, he's not fully sure, he's trying to work it out in his own head. It was some damned juggernaut. That's your money. There it is right there. Damned juggernaut. Now for starters, it was some damned juggernaut. He's saying one thing is another, therefore we're using a metaphor. In order to fully unpack this, I need to look at damned and juggernaut. If I'm going to use that quotation, that full thing, I need to explore it all, or you're just wasting ink. The first thing I'm going to go for is damned, an adjective. And what does that mean? Well, I suppose that you can explain it in many ways. To me, it makes me think someone who's been cast out by God, someone who's been regarded as no longer any good. Juggernaut is an unstoppable force. There's no emotion there. There's no empathy. It's just something that you can't control, and this will instill fear in the reader. So what does it really mean? It's saying that the person, and we're talking about Mr. Hyde as we later find out, who trampled this girl, obviously we need to kind of contextualize it, say what's actually going on. The person who did this isn't like a person at all. They're out of control. And because someone's out of control, because somebody isn't being ruled by morality or expected behaviour of the time, even in general now, you wouldn't knock over a little girl and kind of not even think about it. Because of that, then automatically I'm being painted a picture of a character who I don't know yet, but I'm being told there's something up with this character. He's not even a human. Now, the social historical context. Damned. It's a religious reference. Obviously, there's a lot of things going on with religion in Victorian times. More on that later. At the time, though, people were starting to question religion. However, they still went to church on Sundays. They were still expected to behave in a Christian way. And for somebody to be referred to as kind of being cast out by the church, that is a scary thing. The reference, I was looking at alternative meanings, the reference to a juggernaut perhaps is linked into the industrialisation taking place at the time. Perhaps that links the idea that people are more interested in machines than they are in people. So he seems like an uncaring character lacking empathy. And which quotations could you link this to? Well, any quotation about religion, Satan's signature, for example, any kind of comment linking to God or God kind of looking. Once you've explored some of the social historical context, and remember, don't use too much of your space and your allocated time talking about the context. Especially you history buffs, you love talking about what it was like, but there is no point in talking too much. I would say 10-12% of what you're writing should link to the social historical context. Yes, it's very interesting, but at the end of the day, the text must always, always come first. Your turn. Right, here are the rest of them. You might want to jot down some of the notes that I've said about that existing quotation. You might like to pick 1, 2, 3, or all of these to go over them? Can you understand what the words mean? Can you fully explore them? Maybe you can tell me the subject terminology and the technique, but you can't actually explore why that would link to social historical context. Remember, for every single quote, you don't have to do every single thing, but as long as you're proving you can do that, then the rest of them can be supporting details, which will really kind of stand you in good stead to get that higher grade. Now, also, if you can't be bothered, because I know you work hard and you're tired, if you can't be bothered to explore these quotations, just have a little look at them. Can you link any? For example, can you find several examples of similes? Can you find different examples of negative language, for example? Can you link them together? That to me is one of the best things when students do that, because it proves that they're not just stabbing in the dark, they actually can find a real pattern in the work. And one last thing, another thing about chapter 1 is that it's very descriptive. The setting in all of the text is very, very important. One of the ways that I like to help myself remember these quotations is actually to draw the scenes that are taking place. And you'll find the settings themselves become like another character. They have symbolic meaning. They're really, really important. So you might like to just draw the street, draw the house, and use quotations as labels. However you like to learn is the best way. Okay, so good luck with trying to work out what some of those quotations mean. Get hitting those books and look out for my videos for any of the topics you'd like some help with. Okay, goodbye.